My guest today, if you've been in the Des Moines area, is Jacob Repp. Jacob's known for connecting people. And yeah, we've been connected before through a mutual friend of mine. Jacob, how you doing today, man?
Hey, I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, absolutely. It's not every day you get Mr. LinkedIn on your podcast.
Not every day, but...
I just got to ask, that's not a nickname you gave yourself. Where did that come from?
My friends over at Bing Bang, if you are familiar, they have a podcast called the Jealousy Podcast. Mm-hmm. And it's all these people that they're secretly jealous of that they just want to know and meet and talk about why they're jealous of them. And so it was about connection. It was about connecting people. And I primarily only use LinkedIn, and somehow it came up and they called me Mr. LinkedIn Des Moines. And then it's been a title that's stuck. It's not LinkedIn supported and sponsored yet, but if they want to send me some swag, I would not reject it.
Hey, there we go. We're working on that. It's really cool that that's your main source of connection, and connection is such a huge thing. It's, who you shake hands with, it's who you get to know, and you are such a very connected person. I mean, even just on Facebook, we've got like 40 plus mutual friends and people that I barely know, and they're like, oh yeah, I know Jacob. In fact, last week I was talking with my friend Hannah, and I was like, yeah, I'm getting together with this guy next week for an interview. And she goes, is it Jacob Repp? I was like, yep. She goes, oh, I just talked with him last week or something like that. And you're so well connected. What's the reasoning behind that? I mean, obviously you want to have as much influence in the world. If you're somebody like I am, you want to have as much influence as possible, but you made it a desire to meet as many people as possible, provided that they are different from you in one way, whether it was sex, gender, ethnicity, religion, anything like that. What's kind of your drive behind that?
Well, we're not that far removed. I mean, the world we live in right now is still a mess, and everybody is pointing fingers, and it's the blame game. No one will take responsibility, and there's some right things that are reasons for it, and there's a lot of wrong things. And the phrase, and you hear it all the time, is the you people. And it's one of those things that, and I hate that because it's a generalization of all people in one category. And the problem that I hate that, or part of the reason that I hate that, is human nature by default is it's safe to spend time with your group, your people. And so you'll find people that look, think, act, and talk like you. That's safe. You don't push any buttons, and people are comfortable there. And which is not inherently wrong. Like, that's the default. And so if you stretch yourself and as you meet people that are not in that, it's very challenging because they'll think or say things that we're like, well, or you'll be challenged in ways that you haven't been challenged, and it'll make you reevaluate. It'll make you think through positions you've always held just because you've always held them, or the people you had, and then you build relationships. And the weird part about it, and by weird I just mean awesome, is you people goes out the window, because when you're like XYZ person or thing that's going on, you're like, oh yeah, it's because of, and they're like, well, I can't say some broad generalization because I know Jake, or I know a Hannah, or I know this person. That once you have a face, a name, or relationship, you can't go broad brush anything. And it's been awesome. And just attempting to intentionally meet people that were different. It was 2016 and the presidential election was going on. And I don't get into online debate because I'll never convince anybody ever. Right. But one of my guilty pleasures is reading comment sections on online stuff. And so I remember being there right after the election, and there was some friend of mine posted something that was like aligned with some thought I had. And I was like, yeah. And then I was reading the comment section, and I remember somebody giving an alternative view that I've never thought about before. And if it was my post, it'd feel like a personal attack to me. But since it was somebody else's, like, it's fine. And I'm pretty introspective. And so I was like, I wonder, like, I've never thought about this. Why? and just started asking those questions of why, when we're looking at the same facts, we're looking at the same data, we're looking at the same here, and we wind up in opposite conclusions. And that was just a strange place to be as a privileged, like, middle class white male. Like, it was like, hey, I've never been challenged. I've never had to worry about walking in the street. Like, there's just a lot of things that I've never had, that I have friends that have different life experiences than me that I just can't relate to. And so I just went on this journey of trying to meet people and open up my lens just to go, hey, I can't relate, but in a world that is hurting, we need empathy. And it's hard to be empathetic if you do not understand. And even debate by itself, too many people debate right now to respond. So they ask questions to respond instead of asking questions to understand. And I can completely disagree with you, but I want to know your position. I want to know why you believe that. I want to know how, and I'm going to ask some really hard questions that I want you to be able to defend, but I also expect you to challenge me and make sure that my position actually holds up. And so it was wonderful for me. It was one of the best personal growth years, that 16 into 17, that I've ever had, and it changed a lot of things.
One of the things that popped into my head as we're talking about that is there's safety and familiarity. And I know that some people may be thinking, well, you know, Jacob has other jobs outside of being an entrepreneur or a business owner, a small business owner. And I think one of the things that I've realized in talking with different business owners and talking with different entrepreneurs is so many of them are not comfortable with the familiar. So many of them are not comfortable with the status quo. It's the innovative side, and that's what brings about entrepreneurship in so many different ways. And that's a big reason why I wanted to talk to you about this, is because, you know, I don't want it to pigeonhole where most of my listeners, I'll say this, they're not business owners. I would say it's probably 75% or so are people who work in a daily job and people who are in the daily grind. And so I wanted to offer a different perspective of somebody who is in that daily grind, who's not made it their identity, like so many, and I'm not saying that in a negative way, like so many business owners have, like, I own this store, I own this store, but instead I go out and I meet as many people as possible. And that safety and familiarity, I think, is such a key point. You also talked about needing empathy, and I couldn't agree with you more on that. I just talked with a woman on my podcast a couple weeks ago about the reason that she started her bakery was to help pay for in vitro fertilization with her husband, and the pain that she had in going to baby showers because her and her husband hadn't been able to conceive. And she was very open and honest about that. And it's one of those where if I had come into it with, well, I don't really know how you feel, sorry, but instead it's coming into, I may not know how you feel, but let me try and empathize with you in that way. And I think that's such a huge point that you are hitting on, is getting away from the familiar.
Well, that's how you grow. That's where challenging, and you don't have to be a business owner to be able to do that. So it'd be better for you in a lot of ways. You'll be able to connect with more people and building a network. I still think that whether you're in sales or you're own a business or you're just an 8-to-5 type of corporate job, it doesn't matter. The more people you know, the more experiences, and the more people you're able to connect with, we create ripples, and we can actually impact. Like, if you ever get an email from me, my signature is "Go Change the World," and we do that one person at a time, one day at a time, one moment at a time, and life is hard. So a year ago I started sending handwritten cards with a custom wax stamp with my signature. And it's just when I'm thinking about people, or I'm online and I see somebody I wanted to meet, or whatever it is, and I go, oh, you know what? I'm going to send them a card, or I'll put a reminder to write a card like next week. And the number of times that I've gotten phone calls back or emails back going, hey, I don't know you, or it's been a while since we've chatted, but it's been a struggle right now, And I opened up my mail today and got this thing, and it like made my day. I just wanted you to know that. It's like crazy. But also, jobs, promotions happen from relationships and word of mouth and people putting in good words. We're going to talk about it later, but the nonprofit that I'm a part of and sit on their board happened because somebody goes, "Hey, you're passionate about underprivileged and special needs children. Have you heard about this organization?" I go, "No." And so somebody knew my passions and go, "Hey, if this organization aligns with that, you might want to check it out." And so just people out there that that know you, get to experience you. There's opportunity personally and professionally that it will be better off for.
It's so cool hearing that you're so invested in your community. And yeah, you mentioned a little bit about the nonprofit, like you said, we'll get into that. As I've talked to so many small business owners and entrepreneurs, you're absolutely right. The key to growing is relationships. Mm-hmm. You grow relationally, you grow in every other aspect in your life. And community is such a big part in that. That's one thing that you're really involved in is your community, not just within your jobs and within other business owners, but you're really involved in that nonprofit. Let's talk a little bit about that. That nonprofit that we're referencing is Young Variety. Yep. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is?
Yep. So Young Variety, I will still argue and say it's the most impactful young professional group in Iowa. But Young Variety is the arm for Variety of the Children's Charity. And Variety raises about $4 million a year. It's kind of like a United Way, only niche, where instead of just being a nonprofit to get money, you have to be an organization that supports children that are at risk, living with special needs or underprivileged. And so it's very only children impacts organizations in Iowa. And Young Variety is the young professionals arm of that. And that's where it's kind of a think tank. We're coming up with new ideas. Where's the future of Variety going to go? How do we impact more kids? How do we impact more organizations? How do we raise more money? Because every year we get grant ask for more money than what we have. So it's like you have to turn people down or give less than what you want to give. So how do we raise money so that we eventually get to a point and go, we never have to say no, or we never have to do that. So it's a great group of a lot of talented young men and women here in Des Moines, and they're some of my best friends. They're smarter than me. They're more talented than me. They're way more organized than me, but better in pretty much every way than I am. And it's fun to hit the pavement. It's fun to be creative, and it's fun to not only raise money and impact, but then we have tours and we do see stuff for organizations that we've given money, and they talk about, without your money, we wouldn't be able to do this. So we get to see direct impact almost immediately. Which is really awesome. Specialized bikes are anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000. So I don't even care what your income is. If you have a kid that can't ride a bike because of some sort of illness or disease, that's not in the budget. And so being able to give, I don't even know how many we gave away last year, but to give a bike, and especially a lot of those families have other kids too, and you hear the family talk about, and even the siblings that talk about, hey, we got to go on our first family bike ride. Like the first time that as a family they've been able to go on a bike ride that we take for granted, right? So if we never had to worry about, if I want to go on a bike ride, I'm not a biker, but if I wanted to, I could go buy a bike and I could go and do things. I don't have anything hindering me. But when when that's not your life, it's a game changer. Like just families talking about mom and dad weeping, like it changed our lives. And it's really awesome. So we raise a lot of money, we impact a lot of kids, and I can't think of a more noble cause than investing in the future of our future generations.
Absolutely. Kids are so essential, and I mean that's so corny to say. I hated that I just said that, but I mean, kids are so essential to our future. You mentioned that you are really passionate about underprivileged youth. What is there a reason behind being passionate for such a niche group?
I mean, that was my upbringing. So mom, I used to joke and say we were paycheck to paycheck, but the reality was mom had really poor habits. She didn't know any better. And I remember she would use money to buy cigarettes, use food stamps, and then write bounce checks after all that stuff was, which is a very bad financial position to be in. It doesn't make any sense. So I learned a lot of things not to do from watching that, but my mom didn't know any better. And I wouldn't be where I am today, personally, professionally. I went to Drake for college, made some amazing friends, some awesome connections. But if it wasn't for some of the boosters, my football coach, Tom Godfredson, I still write him every now and then and just say, hey, you were really influential of making sure that I actually studied and went to class. You know, I actually showed up to practice ended up being as the football team captain and running back for the football team, and it was all state track, and so it was a lot of fun. But if it wasn't for my coaches and teachers and people that brought me along and believed in me, like, I wouldn't be where I'm at. Yeah. And so there's something to be said about kids that are in despair. And this is not just related to kids. I would challenge anybody that this is why I think you just be kind to people. You have no idea what people are going through. But when you're in that cycle of despair, you're hopeless. And sometimes all you need is somebody to actually believe in you and go, you got this. And that can change the trajectory of a life. And not only a life, but the trajectory of generations to come. And so I was that kid. And so people did that. And then there was a kid named Kyle. That's why I started doing the special needs stuff. And he was just full of life. And he would always come and give like the biggest hugs. And it was awesome. And I honestly, after I went to school, he ended up moving out of state. So I don't even know what he's up to now. But this kid with, I don't know, it wasn't Down syndrome, but it was something like that. And but he's just so full of life, and it's like nothing in my life as bad as it ever got, for a teenage high school kid. Like, oh man, some of the things that you complain about are like hindsight. You look back, you go, yeah, I was just an idiot. I mean, I still do that now, but all that stuff went out the window when you'd be in a room with this kid, and it was just pure joy. And he changed the dynamic of every person he came across. And so I still like to think that part of the reason when I walk in a room and the room changes and the dynamics change is because of Kyle rubbing off on me, kind of. But
Well, it really does go back to talking about community and being connected, like the community that poured into you as somebody who was in the situation they were. Yeah, that's really impactful to hear. Another thing that you're involved in is, Chamber of Commerce. So for somebody like me, who I've heard that phrase so many times before, what exactly is the Chamber of Commerce? How does that help you? How do you help people with that? Like, it's not a big question at all.
Well, my position is way different. So the truth is that I have never been a part of the Chamber of Commerce for the sole purpose of like trying to grow business and do things. And I just think about the world, and I think about business, and I think about entrepreneurship, and I think about organizations differently than most people do. In fact, there's most things I think about differently than most people do. I'm not normal by any means, but a lot of people will join it because the reality is that people do business with people they know, they like, and they trust. There's brands recognition. There's, hey, you sponsor things. You're impacting the community. You're out and about. You're being seen. And so a lot of businesses want ROI to be a part of it. Will you get it? Maybe. I mean, it depends on what's the end game. It depends on what you're going to try to do. It depends on who you're trying to meet. It depends on what your product and service is. Like some of the things, like if you're, I don't know, like Polk City Chamber of Commerce, I'm assuming they have one. I don't actually know, but it's probably going to be different than like downtown Des Moines Chamber of Commerce. Like the needs and the desires and how you can serve a downtown chamber versus like a smaller suburb is just different. And so too many people try to compare them as apples to apples, and that's not fair. It's not fair for a smaller town. So I'm from Newton, so like I would never expect and shouldn't expect the West Des Moines Chamber is probably the most prominent, I would say, from programming and a whole bunch of stuff. And they partner really well with the city of West Des Moines. The city of West Des Moines is a big sponsor and of that chamber, and a lot of the growth over there has come because of that partnership. Well, I would never expect Newton to come close to the scale and the level of stuff that the West Des Moines do. They have a different budget. They have a different clientele. They have different size of businesses, different size of a community. Like, it's just not the same. But they're amazing people. There's a lot of selfless people that give and have reaped a lot of business rewards from it. Have made relationships, and I've always gone and I was like, I'm just trying to make friends. At the end of the day, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. All the research says that. Funny enough, all the research also would say that all things not being equal, people still prefer that. So if you're a business person, you don't have to have the best service. You don't have to have the best product. You don't have to have the best price. Now, eventually, if you're like losing on all of those things, you're going to lose business. But see, at least get an at bat. Like, you don't have to. People, if they know you, they like you, they trust you, they know you're going to come through. You don't have to have the best product or the best price. And it's about relationships trump almost everything. And so I'm out and about because I'm trying to make friends. Chambers are they're awesome. Like, it's hard to be a business in the Des Moines metro, because if you include all the suburb chambers, I don't even know, it's like 15 or 17 chambers, and all of them are asking businesses to join them. Here's our value add. Here's here's sponsorship opportunities. So it would be hard to be a business constantly being like, well, how are you different? And it's confusing sometimes, just because people are like, I feel like we just got a email or a invoice asking or requesting this. I thought we already did that. And I was like, oh no, this was the Johnson Chamber or the Clive one, or so it can be confusing, but even all of those are in the heart of their local communities. They're going, hey, and they're asking the questions, going, hey, how do we help our community thrive? And then how do we help the businesses that are here? And by helping the business, the rest of the stuff, neighborhoods and all that stuff takes care. So those are people that should be living there, working there. They have the pulse of kind of what's going on, what are the needs, and if you rally enough people with a common cause to go, hey, how do we make this better? Some good things happen. And not all of them are probably equal. Leadership plays a big role. Sponsorship plays a big role. Having an active board plays a big role. So, yeah.
So it's all about getting back to pouring into that community and also letting that community pour into you. Because, I mean, let's be honest, business owners are out there to make money. And at some point you have to be willing to put yourself out there to make money. And, I mean, it sounds so selfish. What can I get from this? But I've realized it's not selfish to ask, what can I get from this so I can continue to contribute?
That's true.
And that's so much of what we as entrepreneurs and innovative souls need to do is it's kind of like putting the oxygen mask on first. It's how can this pour into me so that I can continue to pour into other people. And
the one thing that I would add about things like chambers of commerce or breakfast clubs or anything that are like that are business development, salespeople, business owners, is it's a lonely road to be a business owner or in sales. And I had to, when I first got into sales, I had to back off a little bit of some of my core friend group. Not because I hated them. Like, I love them. I still love them. I don't see them as much. But the reality is that people that work in 8 to 5 check in, check out. So they go, oh, it's 8:01 or it's 5:01. I'm done thinking about work. I'm done thinking about here. Or it's a Friday. Like, well, I don't have to worry about Monday. Well, there's a lag time in all sales or business owners of the work you're doing now. You're not going to see any type of return on that for, depending on your sales cycle, weeks, months, years. And so it was just weird because I was like stressed out about things. And then I would like talk to like my friends and they're like, come on, just worry about that tomorrow, or worry about that on Monday. And they just don't get it because their life isn't tied to, hey, you eat what you kill, or hey, there's a lag time. You're just normal. You're used to your like clock in, clock out, and I get a check every 2 weeks. And that's not the way of a business owner. And if you're a business owner, you're also responsible for other people, and should be like to some level you care about your people, their families. Like there's no overlap between work and life. Like the work-life balance doesn't exist for business owners. You're always working and you're always investing in your people and you care because that impacts also your bottom line too. And so it's a lonely road. And so it was just very helpful to also talk to other people that it sounds strange, but I remember the first I went to 1,000,000 Cups and I met a guy, business owner. He was like 30 years, and I was talking about, this is here. And he's like, oh man, yep, I still have that too. And it was just a breath of fresh air of going, oh, you get it? Because I thought I was, based on all my 8 to 5 like friends, I thought I was crazy because I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't be worried about this. Maybe I shouldn't be stressed about this. Maybe I shouldn't maybe I should just put it off for a few days and it'll be fine. And so finding people that are like, oh, yep, I get that struggle, I get that grind, and I get it was very important for me because now it's almost like a therapy group. You know, you're like, oh, don't worry, you're crazy. You're not crazy. Well, the verdict's still out probably, but it's, if you're in the entrepreneur world, it's really, really, really important early on to find your people that get it, because you might have the best friends that are corporate jobs, but they're not going to be able to relate to you. They're not going to be able to give you the same kind of advice. The struggle is just different. And so I still have them. I still hang out with those people, so I didn't completely cut them out. But I had to spend intentionally more time with people that were going through the same thing for my own sanity.
Absolutely. And I think it ties back into what we were talking about in the beginning of the episode where, in a world that's hurting, we all need this empathy. But it's so great to have people within our circles who understand what we're going through. And that's such an important step. And as we wrap up, I want to say that I think it's so cool and so insightful to be able to have a conversation with you about the necessity for building that community. Because that's one thing that I think people don't realize is they have to build that community. When Teddy Roosevelt was a kid, he was a sick kid. He was a very sickly kid. He came into his office and his father was standing there, and Teddy always had a great view of his dad. His dad was like the Mount Everest of dads for Teddy Roosevelt. He was standing there, and Teddy, this sick kid, not nearly the president that we ended up knowing, but his dad looked at him and said, son, if you want to change, you need to build your body. And I think that kick-started a fire in Teddy Roosevelt, and it's documented that that's what kick-started it to where he became a boxing champion. He reformed football as we know it today. And it's all because of that one line, you have to build your body. You have to shape it. You have to build your community. You have to shape it. It needs to be intentional. And I'm hearing that intentionality come across in conversation with you. And in fact, that's how I initially discovered you, was because of that intentionality, that meet as many people as possible, provided that they're different. And we're all coming full circle.
Well, it's true. Everyone has different KPIs and stuff, and I don't really track a lot of those things. The only real things I track is I go, hey, the goal is to, on a daily basis, meet 2 new people. And I actually would say 2 new interesting people is how I define it. And the reason is simple for me, that my life is never boring. And it doesn't mean I have to be best friends. These are people that, like, when I'm traveling, I meet in a coffee shop. It's good for me to just be able to stir up conversations with strangers. Like, it's just helpful. That's uncomfortable. But there's also so many amazing people that have done cool stuff that you would never know about. And so my life will never be boring. But also that means that I'll meet 730 new people a year. And since the average human has a network of 250 people, and that data just goes to the average funeral is about 250 that would get invited to the funeral, and you go, oh, perfect. So that means indirectly, every individual that I ever come in contact with gives me access to tens of thousands of people. And if you're in business, you're like, hey, well, that could be a great prospect, a good referral partner, a good client, a good whatever. Or my mom and grandma would say also potentially a spouse for me, because they, I'm glad we're done with holiday season right now, because grandma really wants great grandkids. I was like,
I get it.
Hey, back off. So maybe those fall in there, but also, and then great friends, and then learning new skills and different insights to different things. So it's like, great. So you do that, and I don't have to hit it. I don't like yell at myself if I don't. And there's some things that are outside of my control, but as a general rule, hey, I don't want to have a boring life, and I want to meet new people. And then my second thing I track is connecting 10 people a week. So if I do that, that means that 520 people a year are going to meet at least sooner had I not intervened. And that's fun. It's almost like being a matchmaker. So like my birthday party, we'll raise some money for House of Mercy. May 3rd, everybody's invited. We're at the Flying Moose. There'll be a $5 minimum donation to House of Mercy. So there's my plug. And it's just one giant networking event. And I love it because it's almost like, there's times when I sit over on the side, and it's almost like Mr. Burns going, excellent. As I'm watching people, I go, you guys would never meet, you would never like go and say, oh, hey, I'm Jacob. And then they would just never meet. But by creating this space where people have to like talk, they're like, oh yeah, hey, how do you know Jacob? They're meeting. I watch and I go, oh my gosh, I'm so happy because I wanted you guys to meet, because you guys could be such good friends, or you just have so much in common. And since I just run in a lot of different circles, they would never intentionally hear. So I love my birthday, and I'm going to create a space for all those circles to get together and then watch magic happen. And every year it does. People do business together. People like I got kicked off my aunt and uncle's volleyball team one year. I didn't find out till like the year later. I thought they didn't redo it. And they're like, hey, yeah. Your buddy, have you talked to him? I was like, how do you know? I met at your birthday. He was on our volleyball team last year. I go, whoa, what? You guys played last year? I'm like, yeah. So I was like, wow, cool. Thanks. But those are just fun things. Create community, meet people, connect people, and it's just a lot of fun. Yeah, you just get to play matchmaker.
And I think that's a great way to finish it up on, is create community, meet people, and connect people. It's like we were saying, building your body of connections and doing it so that other people can get connected as well. And I think that's at the heart of an entrepreneur and an innovator. And I just want to commend you on that. I think that's awesome, and I've really enjoyed this conversation. This has been a great one. Thanks for taking the time to be on it.
Well, thanks for reaching out. I mean, it's been years since we've seen each other, so
a very long time.
But it's been fun. I always enjoy doing this. I love the talk, and just like anything else, like people have to make things their own, and so there's no like script or map to be able to be successful in this. If you're an introvert, extrovert, doesn't matter. You should still be doing it to some capacity, but make it your own. Have it so it fits you, and so whatever. Take everything I will say or any of your guests say as a grain of salt, and then apply the good things and apply it in a way that would work for you. And so, but you will never go wrong by intentionally, and that's the thing, is that it has to be intentional, because intentionality, like we have a finite amount of time, energy, and money, and emotional, support, emotional, I don't know, whatever you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there's only so much of that. And so if by you going one place instead of another, you're making a decision and inherently are excluding something else. And so you just have to go. It takes intentionality to invest in people, and I define networking that way: the intentional investment of time and energy into building mutually beneficial relationships for the betterment of our community. Like, that's how I define it. I teach a networking class, and I go, we need to be on the same starting point if we're going to get to the same ending point. And that's how we do it. The intentional investment of time and energy into building genuine relationships for the benefit of our community. Boom.
There you go. Write it down. Jacob, this has been a great episode. Thank you very much for taking the time. Thanks for being an outsider with me. Have a good one.